Right. Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Churly, and on the call with me today, we've also got Ben Cook from ManagementStudio. And what we'll be doing today is showing you how you can understand your EUC environment and get data ready for your Windows 11 migrations using existing data in your estate via ManagementStudio to generate what we're looking at here today, which is an Engage report. One of the largest challenges when looking at planning a migration to Windows 11 is knowing where to start. Without the information, planning the steps that get you to your end goal is much more difficult. So the Engage report was created to help provide guidance to areas that you need to focus on, potential savings that might be made by using tool sets to help remove some of the guesswork and heavy lifting. And the best part is that we can do this for you for free. The Engage report is a zero-cost engagement that is intended to provide business knowledge as you start to plan ahead for your Windows 11 migrations. What we're talking about here today is helping you get the most out of your existing data. So a lot of environments will have lots of data in lots of different tools. So you'll have tools like SCCM that understand about computers and applications. Tools like Active Directory that understand about people in your environment. You'll have other sources of information in your estate potentially that will enrich that with locations or other pieces of information. What we do with ManagementStudio is we pull these disparate sources of data into what we call knowledge, and then that helps us pull together your report to present back to you. And tying these key pieces of information together is really the key about what we're helping here with today. We expect from this report that you will either be able to confirm some of your current understandings about your estate and environment, or it's going to highlight some surprising challenges and roadblocks, or even opportunities for upcoming projects like Windows 11. So, as I say, we're looking at helping you get the most out of your data with regards to planning positive. So things that we can help identify will be where you've got Windows 11 ready applications, where you've got devices that are ready for migration, where you've got applications that have been updated recently, devices by make, devices by region, location, or department. So this helps you get a sense of your environment. Savings opportunities. So we can help you identify where there are unused applications in the estate, where there are unused devices in the estate which might be able to be reclaimed and recycled, and identify licenses that might be able to be reharvested, and looking at removing duplicate applications. So within that application sphere, there's a lot that we can do to help you understand and optimize your application estate. With regards to budgeting, we can help identify whether there are devices that are outside of vendor support, whether there are devices that are out of warranty, devices that won't support Windows 11, or applications that maybe won't be running correctly on Windows 11. And again, these can help you flag up with planning ahead with your budget for your projects. And from a security standpoint, we can identify where there are leavers accounts, unused devices that maybe aren't receiving security updates, devices that aren't reporting into toolsets like SCCM, and flag up where there are potentially non-business applications in your estate that might be a security risk. One of the key things that we want to call out is that the Engage process is very quick and easy to run. We will typically have an initial 30-minute call where we will, for a on-site SCCM-based installation, look to deploy a connection pack. We can then, the data is then anonymized into ManagementStudio. We will then work with the ManagementStudio team to create your Windows 11 Engage report, and then that will get presented back to you in a workshop, typically 10 or 15 days after your engagement. And the workshop is geared around us helping to review through the data with you and pulling out observations, help you understand the logic behind the data in the report and discuss areas that might be surprising to you, and also highlight areas in the report where we can see opportunities for optimization, cost savings, and/or automation. As I've said on the last slide, the tool set is very easy to set up. So if you're running Active Directory and SCCM, it's an on-premise setup. We have to do the 30-minute on-site, not on-site, so the 30-minute setup of the connector. But we can also support environments that are now fully on Azure Active Directory and Microsoft Intune. And at that point, we can streamline the process even further by not requiring the local connector to be set up. If we do need to set up the local connector, all it needs is an engineer with an account and read-only permissions to AD and MECM or SCCM. A single device to run the connection pack on, and internet connectivity from that device back to ManagementStudio Cloud. And this can all be set up over a very quick remote session. What I'll do now is I will stop sharing and I'll hand over to Ben Cook. And Ben will walk you through some of the underlying tools that are used to pull this together and show you a little bit more data. So let me transfer you to Ben.
Great stuff. Thanks ever so much, Mark. Hopefully you can all hear me okay, and hopefully you can see my screen too. Good. Yeah, that looks like it's all working. So I'm going to talk to you in a little bit more detail about exactly what this Engage report is going to include. There were a couple of options here. I could have got one of our existing Engage reports that we've run for a prospect and just kind of talk you through the PDF. But I thought what would be more useful is if I actually showed you how we produce the report. The tooling we use is called ManagementStudio. It's our product. Now, this product is used to generate all of the data that we present back to you in this PDF report that Mark's been talking to you about. So I thought, rather than the PDF, I'll talk you through the product, give you a mini demonstration, and you can start to see how that data is coming out. But first things first, what is ManagementStudio? I'm guessing a lot of you won't have seen this product before. So at a very high level, what the product is all about is workflow, user engagement, and automation for enterprise IT. We were born out of an app tracking solution. We then became a migration tool set. And now we've got ManagementStudio, which is an EUC tool to manage change in an environment. It means we've got workflow for all the moving parts. So things like users, if they're being moved into a new cloud platform, or devices, if they're being upgraded to, say, Windows 11, we've got the workflow to support that. We've got user engagement piece, which is engaging with users with automated emails that can be triggered or scheduled so that they know exactly what's going on with that change program. And finally, we've got the automation piece, which is driving change in the environment at the right point in time to the right people or devices. So, for example, if a device needs to be put into a certain group or collection at a certain point in time, our tooling will do that at the right point in time. It's a fantastic tool set. I'm going to run you through some of the screens here. But first of all, how do we get data into ManagementStudio? Well, it's actually through something we call connectors. And connectors pull in data from the sources which Mark mentioned, things like Intune and Azure and MECM and various other systems. And in fact, we can get data in from any system so that we can present it back to you in our tooling and produce these fantastic reports. So let's talk a little bit about the dashboards first of all. So I've got my dashboard open here, and I can see things like the number of apps, users, and devices in the estate. I've got an application-centric dashboard here. I've got a user one. I've even got one here, which is the operating system end of life. So we have information around when Windows versions are going end of life, and you can actually see that I've got in my my set of data here about 3,500 devices where the operating system is no longer in support and actually went out of support over 6 months ago. So that's a little insight into some of the data. Before we go any further, what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about applications. I'm going to switch to a different instance now. One of the big challenges when we start out with any prospect is looking at their application estate, looking which applications are being run, and trying to sort through that vast number of applications. When we discover applications in the tooling via those connectors, they come into this pending state here. We've got a piece of technology called ACE, which stands for Asset Confidence Engine. And what this is doing is it's taking our existing customers' decisions around apps harvesting them and putting them into the cloud in an anonymized way and presenting them back to you as a new prospect or customer so that you can make easy decisions around those applications. Typically, we discover thousands of applications, so rather than spending days or weeks sorting through them and trying to understand what's legitimate, what's a business app, what's not, what needs rationalizing, we can use the ACE engine. So I've got about 1,400 in here. Just for this demonstration, I'm going to show you the Adobe apps. So there's about 100 Adobe apps in here. And the ACE engine does two things. It normalizes the data. So I'll bring up that screen now. The normalization is about cleansing the data. So when the window pops open here, you'll see wherever there's a yellow box here, it's suggesting a change to the data. So rather than the vendor being Adobe Inc., we're going to change it to Adobe. And we'll actually change all of the Adobes to Adobe for consistency. And also does things about cleaning up versioning. We've got a double quote here and stripping off some text which is not relevant. It's really easy to do. We just select the ones we want to change, approve it, and apply it. That has cleaned those Adobe apps. To do that manually, it's quite a few days worth of effort. So ACE is phenomenal for that. We also do things like add in application categories and application descriptions that you can see here. The next piece is the rationalization. So it's about understanding what's an out of scope app, as in what's a non-business app, what's a business app, and which versions we can roll up. So which versions we can rationalize. So I'll go into that screen now. This is the rationalization screen. And this is where we start to see the confidence rating. So 64% of our customers have rejected this particular line item. And that's probably because it's a component of something else. The Adobe Crash Reporter service isn't something we're going to be delivering to our end users, but it probably is part of maybe Adobe Reader, Acrobat, something like that. So we get suggestions around rejecting apps, rationalizing apps, accepting apps. In fact, let me sort by the app name. That might be a bit easier to follow here. And we can start to see all of these Adobe Reader and Acrobat Manager are being suggested as rejections with quite a high confidence rating. But look at the readers here. These are all being suggested as rationalized, except the highest version here. And so we can see that's a 95% confidence rating. Again, this normally takes a number of days or weeks to process. Very easy to do now. I just select the records I want to do, quick approve and apply. And that's taking all of those decisions that those other customers have taken and applying it to our estate. Like I say, very quick. If I close that down now and look at my accepted apps, this was a blank list a moment ago. We'll see what the processing has done now. So these are the 4 applications that are now in our queue. And you can see the amount of effort it took me there to take that list down from 100 down to 4. So it's super powerful. So that's going to help you in terms of understanding the application estate. The next thing I want to look at is a bit of data around users. So I'm going to switch to my other instance and I'm going to come into my user migrations. This is where we list out all the people who are in scope for this particular change program. I think I've got about 5,000 in here. The reason I want to come in here is just to show you what it looks like. We've got the workflow on the left-hand side. If I double click on one of my users, Bonnie, I can see a bit more information about her. So things like first name, the last name. This is typically coming in from Azure or AD. Things like the SAM account, email address, phone number, all the kind of the standard stuff. What's also interesting is the blueprints. So blueprints we typically use for mapping out the user's department and location, and they are hierarchical. So we can have effectively folders in here. And the other things we get are the apps that have been used by Bonnie. So she's been using 14 apps, the devices. We can also bring in things like mailboxes and mobile devices if that's useful for that particular program. So that's a little bit about the data. The other thing we can do with blueprints is I can filter my entire list of users by blueprint. So for example, if I want to see the people based in EMEA, I can just click on that EMEA folder. And I could do this for one of the countries in EMEA, but for this demonstration, I'm going to do the whole of EMEA. And that's taken my user base down to about 800 people. Now what I want to do is I want to understand which applications I should be focusing on to get as many people, say, onto Windows 11 as I can. And this is really all about understanding which applications people are using to be able to do that. So I select those people. I've run something called a projection report, because this is going to be projecting into the future of what I should be doing. I need to give it a kind of a finger in the air. How many apps do I think I can test per week for Windows 11? And how many weeks do I want to look into the future? So I set those parameters up. I run the report, and what it's doing is it's saying, right, we know who's in EMEA. We know those 800 people. We know the applications they have been running. We've got that data. We can therefore tell you which are the most used apps by the people in EMEA, and we can say, if you can do 10 of those per week, you can get quite a few people migrated if you focus on the most used apps first. And that's what the chart's showing us. The blue lines are my weekly efforts, that's actually where we are today, February the 27th. In 1 week, if we tested 10 apps for Windows 11, this is 20 apps, 30 apps, 40 apps, and so on. The green line is showing us how many people are ready for receiving Windows 11 at that point in time. So 4 weeks in, 40 apps in, I could get 166 people ready or migrated actually onto Windows 11 at that point. Let's go back to week 1 for a moment, because I want to show you the apps that I need to focus on for week 1. So I click on week 1, I change at the bottom half to the applications, and I want just the point in time. So these 10 apps listed here are the 10 apps that I should be focusing on testing in week 1 and so on. So by the time I get to week 4, I've tested 40 apps, and I can see if I come into the user migrations, the people who are ready for Windows 11, assuming I can get those 40 apps tested. And we produced some reports and charts in the Engage report to show you this projection report. And that's why I wanted to show you that, because if you do want this report, this is how we're generating it. So it's useful to have a bit of an understanding about how we actually produce that data. So that's the projection report. A lot of organizations are taking sort of different approaches to moving to Windows 11. One of them is looking at the operating system end of life dates. So they're looking at devices which have maybe an operating system that's out of support and using that as a starting point for moving devices to Windows 11. And that's a totally valid approach. So what I'm going to do now is move into my devices section and have a look at a report that shows us exactly that. It's this ACE OS end of life report. So this is also using the ACE engine. Like I said earlier on, we've got data around which operating systems have gone end of life, and we can tell you that in this report. We get our list of, it's about 5,500 devices here with the support status. And of course, I can group by the support status very easily just by dragging that header up here. And I can get an idea of numbers around which OSs are end of life. In this estate, it's about 3,500 of my 5,500 have gone out of support. In actual fact, that's the number we saw earlier on in the dashboard. It was that 3,500 line chart we saw. So this is quite a nice one because it allows you to start thinking about, maybe these are the 3,500 devices we should be focusing our efforts on first in terms of getting them onto a supported operating system. And the Engage report includes this type of data. We're finding with the Engage reports we've run to date, some customers are very well supported in terms of the OS and some are not so well supported. And sometimes that can be a bit of a surprise. So it's a really valuable piece of that Engage report. Another possible approach to looking at Windows 11, and again, this is included in that Engage report, is looking at hardware compatibility. If a device isn't able to run Windows 11, then that's clearly not a good target. To upgrade to Windows 11, it's going to need some sort of a hardware upgrade or a swap out. And that's another report we include. It is run out of that same area here. Because we're pulling all of the hardware data out through those connectors, we're able to produce this report. And again, you've got a similar set of data, a list of devices, and then their compatibility status. And I'll show you that once it's come up. There we go. Let's just sort by device ID. So now we've got the devices and the various data within that we're using to work out if they are Windows 11 compatible. And over on the far right hand side, we've got an overall Win 11 compatibility. Of my 5,500 devices, we've got how many? About 10%, about 500-600, which are compatible with Windows 11. So this might be a good starting point in terms of upgrading those endpoints to Windows 11. We're not going to be doing the servers, so we might want to do some filtering around the OS. But also, we've got the available information now on which devices are not going to be supported and the reasons why. So the reasons why are shown in red here. So things like TPM version and disk space. So again, we include that report as part of the Engage report, which can be really handy when you're thinking about how best to transition to Windows 11. I think I've probably shown you enough. Hopefully that's given you a good flavour of Management Studio. And I'm going to pass back to you, Mark, to wrap up.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ben. Perfect. All right. So thank you, Ben, for walking through that. So yes, so what Ben's shown you is the underlying tool set that is used to pull together your Engage report. What we'll present you with is roughly about a 35-page report. And as I've already said before, it's going to be presented back via a short workshop. And the goal here is it's going to highlight back on key areas. It's great to get all of this important information in a single place about applications and devices in a single document. And this can be used for potentially planning ahead, whether this is for Windows 11 specifically, or maybe for other upcoming projects you've got on your 2024 roadmap. What we've found is when we've walked through it with customers that, there are occasionally some very interesting pieces that come out of it. One of the customers that we presented to had a significantly higher volume of development applications in their estate, which was quite a surprise to them. So, by pulling that together, they were able to look at that, understand what that meant to their environment, and then look at rationalizing that down. So yes, thank you ever so much for your time today, everybody. I hope you found the webinar useful. We've intended to keep this relatively short and sweet, with the goal that if there's an interest in this, that you can come back to us. The highlights that we really just want to make sure that we've laboured on this is a free of charge engagement. It's a very quick to run engagement, and it's very easy to set up. So in terms of the obstacles to get this in, we can do this quickly, easily, and there's no cost to this. Off the back of today's webinar, we'll be sending out a summary PDF, which will give you a sample Engage report to look through. If you've got any questions following this session, we'd obviously be delighted to hear from you, and we can then come back to you with anything that's there. We will also be posting up a recording of this webinar if anyone joined late, or if you have colleagues that couldn't make it today. So once again, thank you, Ben, for your time today. Thank you, everyone who joined us. I will now close the webinar. Thank you, everyone.